In this week's episode, we sat down with Joel Tilford, the founder and owner of Spartan Home Services, a roofing and solar company. It was an incredibly fascinating and interesting conversation with Joel, and there's a lot to take away from. The first is really around entrepreneurial spirit. When you listen to Joel and he takes you through his story, it really started at a really young age, the way that he looked at opportunities, he looked at businesses, and then he really executed on chasing his dreams and his passions. And then two is family. When Joel walks through his story, every piece of his story includes his family, his mother, his father, his brother, his sister, and then now his extended family as he's grown his businesses and he's brought them into what he does on a daily basis. And then three is really a self-belief and the opportunity to take a calculated risk. Joel will walk you through the way that he looks at an opportunity. He looks at what he needs to do to hit and achieve the goals and the objectives that he has, and then how he executes. Again, just a wonderful conversation with Joel. So stay motivated, stay inspired, sit back and enjoy this episode of Tell Us Your Story.
Welcome to Tell Us Your Story, the podcast that tells the diverse stories of businesses, leaders, and influencers throughout Northern California. Our mission is to ignite inspiration, foster education, and bring our community together. Join us as we unravel the path to achievement, discovering how these remarkable businesses and leaders navigated obstacles, conquered hardships, and transformed failures into success.
Grew up until I was like 10 in the Bay Area, Fremont, Newark. Moved out from there in 2007 to Lincoln. Grew up in Lincoln. I have two siblings, a brother and a sister, both older. Moving during those years was obviously, like at my age, was really odd because that's the age where you have a hard time making friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was like an interesting age to move at, which is honestly probably where most of my life changed for the better.
And so did you move, were you in a bigger community? And then, because when I think of Lincoln, California, it's smaller. So did you go from a bigger community to a smaller community?
Hey, it was the fastest growing city in the U.S. for a couple of years. Yeah, we had a pretty good community. So I was homeschooled. We had a pretty good community of other homeschoolers we would hang out with. So I didn't get that socially awkward part of being homeschooled. Got it. A lot of people get.
Wait, homeschooled before you moved to Lincoln or?
And after.
Both. Okay, just both. Okay.
And then my parents did a really good job about trying to rebuild that when we moved up here. But when you're 10, trying to make a bunch of new friends that you've never met before, right? That's a weird age. But I had a decent social circle. I got to play sports in the area for a private Christian school. So it was great. I just went there and played sports. I did nothing else. So that was a pretty nice plus.
And what about your parents? What do your parents do for a living? What? Both parents in the household? What was that like?
Yeah, so my dad was in construction since before I was born, like 30 years now or something. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but when the 2008 crash happened, she started doing her own buying and selling of stuff. When eBay was first a thing, buying and selling stuff from garage sales.
And she was also your teacher, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so imagine that you're sitting there and I'm going doing my schoolwork for the day, and then she wants to run to a garage sale, and I'm like, hey, I'll go with you. And then I'm like 12 years old on her BlackBerry Pearl with a little scroll wheel, trying to search something on eBay to see what the resale value would be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to your businesses and all of that you've done. During this time, when does your entrepreneurial spirit really start to, when does that fire get lit?
Yeah, that happened. It was a catalyst based on, like, I could tell being young that my parents were having financial trouble in the 2008 crash or shortly after that because they had moved to a new area. So my dad's referral business and whatnot was based in the Bay. And then they move up here and the market was hot, and then the market collapses out from under him. He loses all his referral business because he didn't really have any up here. So he would have to drive to the Bay for everything. So number one, he'd have to drive all the time. Two, they were struggling to get enough work. So they were trying to do whatever they could to, like, buy and sell stuff to make money while still teaching me and my siblings. And they managed to do it. But even at like 12 or 13, I could tell, like, hey, there's some financial trouble. And you could tell when they weren't really getting along too well, right?
Yeah, the stress.
Yeah, and at that age, I could tell, this is money based. And so there was a certain point where I was like, I am not going to let that happen to me. And I was like 14, and I made a little recording on my phone that like I'm not basically like I'm gonna make enough for my parents to retire, because I could tell they were putting like everything into raising us. And so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna return the favor when I can.
Oh, wow. That's incredibly insightful at 14. Most 14-year-olds are not thinking about that.
I was all sad because I'm 14. I hear my parents like fighting, right? And I connected the dots on what it was on. So I was like, I made a literally recording on an old iPod Touch 2 or something, right? A really old iPod. And made that recording. And honestly, that I lost it a few years back, but I'm sure I still have it somewhere. That's like the most infinite motivation you could ever have right there. And then recently, like I've been able to see my mom talk to her friends and talk about how she's going to be able to retire soon. And like, that just is like fuel on the fire, right?
Yeah, well, we're gonna get to that spot. So take us back to that when you're at 14. There's a lot of kids that have parents that fight. They go through money trouble. There's a lot, and not everybody is pulling out and writing themselves a message. Some are getting in trouble. Some are putting their focuses into sports. So why do you think you went that way versus any other direction you could have went?
Yeah. I was not a problem child because I actually, like, my parents gave us a lot of trust back. So, like, I didn't really have any inclination to go make things harder for them, like, ever. But yeah, the main thing was, like, my dad's struggling to figure out how to, pay bills. I could tell they're behind on a lot of stuff. And he ends up going to a garage sale with my mom and found a Go-Kart that had a motor that didn't run. And I think he paid like $100 for it. And brought it home, turned around, or like he fixed it, replaced, I think, the carb or something, turned around and sold it like the next day for like $450 or something. And I'm like 14. I'm like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah, right? So he was hustling.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. And he's simultaneously getting up at 3 a.m. to drive down to the bay and go do construction jobs that he did have down there. And then he was also doing that other stuff. So he did like one or two of those. And then I was like, interesting, that looks kind of fun. And then I found one. Or maybe he found it for me and like said, hey, you might want to try this, right? And then I had like $80 to my name, right? Because I'm 14. So I go to my mom, I say, Mom, this is $200. Please loan me $120. She's like, okay, I'll loan you that. I'm like, I'll pay you right back. So she loaned me $120. I bought it. Obviously, I got driven to pick it up, right?
Yeah.
Got help getting it. So I'm sure it cost them some money. But went and picked it up, brought it back, fixed the carb, got it running, cleaned it up, I think like a day later, and sold it like 2 days later for $500. And that's like the best quick fix, right? I'm 14. I'm like, oh, wow, that was really easy to turn my 80, because I didn't even put up the full money, right? My 80 turned into now, whatever that is, three something, good
amount.
Yeah, 380, right? And I'm like, all right, cool. Now I got 380. I gave my mom the money back. I think with interest. I can't remember exactly, but I believe there was a small like $10 of interest on it. Loan shark rates. But
so light bulb went off.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of fun. And then I was like seeing how my dad was doing it, just browsing Craigslist, and you just got to kind of get a feel for it. That looks like it should be worth more than that. Or is this something that's going to be an easy fix? And started to get a feel for that. Started to buy and sell a lot more in go-karts again and again. Finally got into someone actually traded me a dirt bike for a quad. I think it was a quad for one of my go-karts. So then it transitioned me over into like actual registered vehicles. Started moving into bikes, like dirt bikes, quads. Eventually moved into jet skis.
All right, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just so many questions. Yeah. So one, are your siblings like you, or do you feel like you're different? Not that you have to tell all about it, but
they're both very different, but also like the same in some ways. None of them are like as like dollars and cents minded as me, but they're both. My brother has his own business, does really well for himself. So
yeah, the mindset is just, it's like Anthony said at 14, even that young, is just, it seems very different. And so just on your parents, so for her to even, so it sounds like they're very supportive, like they're going through money problems enough that it's causing the tension, and they're still loaning you $120 and like believing that you could fix this up. So do you think that that's just the supporter watching them, like that dynamic has shaped?
Yeah, it for sure has. And just seeing that they did whatever they could to make it work, right? And stayed together and managed to still raise us. So like, that's a huge factor for me. Like, I'm not in a position where I have to be that stressed right now. So why would I not put everything I have into being as successful as I can before that becomes my position? Because I don't want to be in that spot ever.
Yeah, and when you're going through that and you're flipping, you're getting to the registered vehicle spot. What are you doing with your money? Is it automatically you're buying bigger and bigger and bigger and trying to flip bigger?
More and more. At a certain point, I'm up to like 4 or 5 things at a time, rotating, selling something every 3 or 4 days. I think I've sold about 80 vehicles in total now. So 80. Well, actually, that doesn't include Go-Karts. Probably over 100.
So if I had to ask you the balance of what was the addiction to the fun part of it versus the money part of it in those early years, because I imagine it's a thrill, right? You're hunting, you're finding it, you're fixing it, you're flipping it. Does money become secondary to some of that?
Money was always like an important part of it, but I also got to sit there and take apart motors, and not in the junker way, right, where it's someone just scrapping things, but actually like take apart a thing that's mostly good with a little problem and put it back to where it's fully functional, and then see someone else enjoy it, like goes back out into circulation rather than getting thrown away. That was pretty fun.
It almost sounds like it's a puzzle. Like there's something small, you got to go find that small, and you're flipping it out.
Yeah, it's more of like I'm sitting there thinking, if someone can figure this out, I can figure this out. It's a motor, right? There's only a few different things about each motor. Most of them are very similar in primary structure. Maybe the parts look a little different, but the actual thing about it is the same. So if some engineer can put it together, I can repair it.
And so are you leveraging, I'm trying to think of the years now. You're 26 now, so 10, 12, I guess the internet was around. Are you leveraging the internet to go teach yourself how to do all of this?
Yeah. YouTube. I was on a lot of forums, like some Watercraft Today or something, some website where it's like you go on there and you can post what your vehicle's having wrong with it. You can read through a bunch of things, learn from a bunch of other people, and they give you advice. It actually got to the point within a couple of years where I was the one giving advice. Whereas like you throw a motor at me and I could probably figure out what's wrong with it within 5 minutes, like every time.
You just put the time in, like over time and studying and learning, you become the expert.
Yeah. Although if you ever want to buy a motor, like a dirt bike to ride on or something, you can never enjoy them anymore because the moment anything is slightly wrong, you can tell. And it's very upsetting. It takes all the fun out of it.
You'll fix other people's, but it's not as fun to fix your own. Or
I'll fix my own.
You'll just know.
Yeah, you'll just know. Like you can feel that it's slightly down on power, and it'll make it through the day. But I'm sitting there the whole day. Something's gonna be wrong with this soon. My day is ruined.
Yeah.
So
let's go through your high school years then. So or your teen years. So 14 to 18, you're buying, selling cars. And do you have a social life, or are you obsessed with this?
I had a social life. Yeah, I had a pretty solid social life because I didn't I didn't have a job anywhere. I just did whatever I wanted when I wanted, but I made sure I worked. It was kind of like, if I want money, I have to work. So I would go work on my stuff, and the moment someone wants to hang out, sure, I'll go hang out. And the moment I'm not hanging out with someone, I'm right back to working on myself.
Yeah, so you were busy. So completely staying out of trouble, just focused on whether it was sports and friends. And then at this point, it's not a hobby. This is your income. This is your job that you're doing. Yeah,
and I did that for quite a while. And then right after I got out of high school, or right at the tail end of it, I had a couple of buddies that were working at Papa Murphy's. And so I'm like, all right, I don't have any experience actually interfacing with people other than selling like on Craigslist. So I'm like, all right, I'll try that. Right. I'll do that for a few months. I'm 18 at the time doing that. And they tried to send me, like I was there for a couple months, and I was a hard worker because I don't want to just be there being a lazy worker. And they tried to send me like manager's training within a few months of being there. And I was like, I'm 18. I don't really feel like managing Papa Murphy's. And they're like, yeah, but we feel like we'd like to train you up and have you start doing it very soon. Yeah. And at that point I'm like, here's my 2-week notice. I turned it in the next day. I'm like, I don't really feel like managing a Papa Murphy's for the rest of my life.
So interesting. You finished school, so you decide not to go to college?
Yeah, I had a offer for a half ride to Willamette, whatever it's called. But it was a college of liberal arts, which had no other classes that were really very interesting to me. And I didn't really want to go play football there. They were a losing team. So I didn't really feel like doing that.
So what's your dream at 18? You decide not to go to school. Like if you go back to that age, which wasn't that long ago, what's the dream?
Yeah, my actual dream was I want to be a real estate agent. And then I started working with some real estate agents. And a lot of them are nice, but the perception of a lot of them is not. And so I'm like, I don't really feel like being in the perception of like a lot of people are not a huge fan of them. I don't really want to be lumped in with that. So I kind of sidestepped. I was still buying and selling stuff, had racked up at my age, I was 18. I think I had like 35 grand in the bank. Right. So I'm like, and I have like probably another 15 grand of vehicles sitting around, not including my
So hold on. So at 18, that's like an incredibly successful 18-year-old.
Yeah.
To have $2,000 in the bank would be impressive for a lot of 18-year-olds. Mm-hmm. Okay. So go ahead.
So what is your relationship to money? So it's one thing to flip and you roll your money into the next project, it sounds like. Did you have that inkling of like, I want to, like even if 18-year-olds did have that money, they're probably going to also blow it somewhere. So do you have that, like, what's your, I guess, spend to earning? Like what's your feelings on that?
I don't know why, but I was really strict about because I was sitting there thinking every extra dollar I add that I don't spend is another dollar I can spend reinvesting. And my cash on cash return was so high, so fast. I was like, I'd much rather buy 3 more dirt bikes at once than go blow that additional $3 grand I just made. So my thing would be like, if I had a machine I bought, and let's say I bought it for $4 grand, so did 500 work, sold it for 6,500, right? Miscellaneous gas and stuff, a couple $100 off that. So I probably made like $1,800. I would take out like maybe $500 for myself. And that's kind of what I would operate on, because I'm young, I'm doing 2 of those a week pretty easily, 1.5 to 2. And who can't live off of $750 to $1,000 a week?
Yeah. So let's go back real quick. Why did you go back? Why did you go work at Papa Murphy's? You got 35 grand in the bank. Yeah. And you went and made, I don't know, 12, 13 bucks an hour.
I wasn't working that much. Like, I was really efficient with my time working on the vehicles. So I'm sitting there like, I have so much free time right now. This is not going to be healthy. I was starting to put on a little bit more weight after stopping playing high school sports. Not a bunch, but like a little bit. And I'm like, I do not want that to happen.
And you picked a pizza spot to go work at.
Uncooked pizza.
True. Uncooked pizza.
Uncooked. But the cookie dough got me.
He's thought about it before I was going to say.
Yeah, the cookie dough got me good though. Yeah.
Oh.
So let's go from 18 on. So what happens? Like you quit that job, you got 35 in the bank, 15,000.
College is a no.
Yeah, college was like still backburnered for me. I was like, maybe I'll end up doing it, maybe I won't. And then I was just like, the idea of going and leaving everyone I know, like I really like my family. I like being around them. The idea of leaving everyone I know and going to college and not know anyone there, because I didn't know a single person that was at that college. I was like, yeah, I don't like that idea. Mm. So I ended up, my brother was working at a marketing and advertising agency doing the web design for him. And basically he was like telling the business owner about me, and he ended up figuring out, I came in and did an interview for a sales position at 18, started generating some appointments, customers coming in for that. Signed a few pretty fast. We had our record month at that company within the first, we did like 80 grand, like the 3rd month I was there or something. Ended up having a little, it just didn't end up working out there. Wasn't the perfect fit. So I ended up quitting doing that. And I had actually sold a website to a guy doing junk removal in Sac. And I was talking to one of the other guys who worked there. And he's like, you should do that, dude. Like, that was super easy. Like, that web design was like super easy for us to do. And I'd learned enough at that point. Like, I threw together my own web design. All I had was a logo designed. I did everything from someone else. I did everything else myself on web design and ads. And in 2016, you had to be pretty bad at Google ads for them not to work really well. They were like highly effective. And for 2 years, they were highly effective. You didn't even need to know what you were doing. So
that's a piece of it though. So figuring out the Google ads and the marketing and the website, one piece. How did you figure out about this junk business? Up to that point, you didn't know anything about it, right?
No, but I sold a website to the guy who was doing it. He turned into a jerk, right? And a couple weeks in, like, he didn't realize he couldn't see that we were doing any work on the site, even though there's an audit log you can check. And we had been. But he ended up backing out. I'm like, what the heck? That was like a big chunk of, I was commission only. So I'm like, I was pretty upset. I'm like, that's pretty annoying. And then I'm like, all right, like, it's taking too long to do these projects. I'm not getting enough commission on them. So I'm like, that's not that hard of a business. I was still buying and selling stuff at the same time, but I'm like, I bet I could do junk removal too. So I went up and hit up a buddy of mine. I'm like, dude, we could figure this out. It can't be that hard, right? It's not, you need a truck, you need a trailer. I've been towing stuff my entire life to go jet ski at the lake, right? Since I got my license, I was taking vehicles to the lake constantly. So I ended up, started it with my ex-business partner. He had his parents come to him like a couple months in and say like, oh, owning your own thing is risky. I don't know if you should do that. So he ended up just saying like, hey, I don't want it anymore. You can have it.
Wow.
I was like, are you sure, man? And like, he hadn't put up any of the cash. I put up all the equipment and everything. So he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So we'd set up all the accounting side of it. And that was where I had a weak spot. He had set that all up. So then I just rolled into doing everything, payroll, all that.
And so hold on real quick. Do you think his was fear? Like you guys were young, starting a business, taking on the risk. It's not parents looking at it like this isn't the path, like the traditional path. You're starting a bit. Was it risk based?
For sure. His parents come from a military or like a Navy background. So that's a very stable thing, right? That's like the most stable you can get. Owning your own thing, especially junk removal, is like the total opposite of that. Total fluctuations, feast or famine, right? Make a ton one day, nothing the next day. So they for sure got gun shy on that. And he didn't come from a background where he was that incentivized to do his own thing. So he really listened to his parents. And I know he regrets it. He said as much. He was all, when he found out how it was doing a couple of years later, he's like, damn. Like,
and so were your parents supportive through that before it we'll get to how well it did, but were they supportive through the whole thing? Like, hey, do your thing.
So to my dad's credit, I had a pickup truck already, but he had a dump trailer that was mostly unused. So I borrowed it from him very short term. I rented it, I believe, for not very much a week, probably well under market rate. Rented it from him, got enough money within the first month to buy a better truck because my other truck was messed up.
From the business.
Yeah.
So you're starting to make money right off the bat.
Yeah, starting to make money, but the truck I had was a not great towing truck. It was super gas inefficient, and the transmission had been having a bunch of issues. I had changed it 5 times, and every new one they gave me was bad. So I was like, all right, I can't waste all my time fixing this truck again. I ended up getting a new truck that my dad actually helped me find because I was busy on jobs. He went out and looked for me, found it, started using it, and like, I think it was 3 weeks later, I got T-boned in an intersection. And it was awesome, honestly, because the insurance agent wrote me a check for the value of the truck. Basically, the truck had a small fuel pressure leak. And so it was fine every morning. If you sat for more than a couple days, you had to just prime the fuel pump. It took like 2 seconds. Really common for that year of it. And we drove it to the auto shop, parked it. It sat over the weekend. And then when they went to try and start it, it wouldn't start. So then they wrote it off as non-running too. Oh. And I'm sitting there like, okay, it's not running. And then they write me a check. I paid $8,000 for the truck. And literally 3 weeks later, I'm holding a check for $18,000. And I'm like, he calls me like, oh, I'm going to give you $18,000 for it. And I'm like, what the heck? That's the first offer. I'm like, okay. And I think I had bought it as a salvage title truck, rebuilt. I don't think they verify any of that. So they just gave me the value like it was new already. So
you
I was just like,
flip things without even trying.
I was like, all right. So then most people would say, hey, I just came up $8,000. Well, my solution was go buy an identical value truck that I already had, and then spend that additional. I spent 7 of that 10 on a brand new dump trailer because I'm like, that's what I want, my own nice new equipment. So I did get a nice little boost of insurance luck there, for sure.
So let me pause. So you go from a passion of flipping vehicles, which is, and there's a hobby there's a passion there. It's different. Now you're picking up trash and it's a business, but what you're doing is different. Are you enjoying what you're doing now as much as you were when you were working on a motor?
Man, I enjoy anything that makes money, to be honest. Like I tie enjoyment to personal success, which is financial success for a lot of things. So no matter how bad it is, if I'm making money, I'm not hating it too much.
Yeah. So are you looking at, as you thinking through the business, okay, I have 3 projects today. This is X amount. I need 2 tomorrow. Like, are you doing all of that? And are you someone who spreadsheets it out? Is it in your mind? Like, how are you doing it all?
I knew my fixed monthly expenses. So I knew what my base gross profit had to be to cover that. Right. And then I knew, okay, on average to get a job, it's going to cost me 8%. Right. So if I do a $100 job, I'm paying, $8. It's higher than that on small jobs, but basically 8% cost of advertising. So I'm like, all right, I know that for every $8 I spend, I can pull in $100 of gross revenue. So if my gross margin is 35%, and I'm spending 8 of that or 45%, I'm spending 8 of that on advertising, then the rest of that's left for overhead and profit.
So who taught you all of this piece? Like, this isn't at 18, 19.
I guess.
Even 26.
Even 26.
So I didn't know any of the terms gross profit or anything like that at the time. granted. But I knew like this is what I need to have to cover my expenses associated with the business.
And is this just from experience, or are you studying this? Is someone talking to you about? Like, I'm fascinated with how your mind got there.
You know, none of it was learned like directly from my family, as far as like they're not that intricate with like gross profit and whatnot. Most of it came from when I was in that sales position for just a few months. I was like, all right, how do I get better at sales? I'm like, because I'm exclusively paid on sales. I mean, I had like a tiny base, I think, but I'm like, I'm basically paid exclusively on sales. How do I get better at this? So I listened to a bunch of Grant Cardone and is it Chuck or no? Tracy Lawrence? No.
I think I know who you're talking about. You're listening, but you're learning through others.
Yeah, to their books about motivation, and then I would just stumble across podcasts, not podcasts, but like videos online that would be talking about overhead and understanding your profit and all that. And like I'm barely grasping it, but every time you're listening to one of those, like one thing, everything might be totally ununderstandable, but you hit one thing, you're like, oh, I get that now, right? You have that little aha moment. And then the next time you watch that video, 3 things connected to that make a little more sense.
And you're just growing on that. So as you're in this business, is it catching momentum? Obviously, it's catching momentum. And what are you doing to fuel that momentum? Because you're not just going out and doing the work. There's got to be the marketing in the background. So how are you fueling it?
Yeah, I'm laying in bed at 10 o'clock at night on my computer with my website open, trying to adjust my verbiage to make people more likely to click through, more likely to call. I'm actively sitting there getting rid of keywords that I haven't generated any leads off of that are pick up one chair, right? It's not worth it for me to go pick up one chair. So I'm getting rid of the really terrible jobs, trying to filter those out. And then I'm actively, when I'm at the jobs, I'm sitting there asking customers, could you leave me a review? I'm a new business owner. I would really appreciate it. Obviously, when you're a new business owner like that and you're young, you have a huge advantage. Like customers will basically put up with anything because they're like, well, even if you were super late and rude, they're like, oh, it's a young guy trying something out. Now, I was usually on time, but a lot of leeway when you're a new business owner.
Yeah, I'm so incredibly fascinated by you. So how old are you at this time?
18. I think I turned 19 like a couple months into it.
Okay, 19. It doesn't matter what age you are, I guess, when you think about the overall picture, but 19 especially. It's one thing to say, I'm going to go, I'm going to build the business. I'm going to go get the trash. But then you're creating the website. You're figuring out the keywords. You're figuring out the Google. Like you are doing it from start to finish. Who else is helping you? Is anyone else helping you? Or are you like just obsessed?
I had one buddy who I would just casually chat with about it here and there. And he had done the Google ads for the clients that we had at the marketing thing. He wasn't really giving me we weren't going back and forth that much, but it was like the little things I didn't understand. I could get enough of a knowledge on it that now I could go in and learn it myself.
It'd give you a thread.
Yeah.
And then you can pull that thread.
Yeah, but in the early versions of all the online marketing, it was so easy to set everything up because there was less features. So it was really not that hard to learn. Now there's 10 times the things to do in them. So it's way harder now. So I've learned it progressively over the time. But boy, if you try and get into like Facebook marketing or stuff like that now, good luck.
It's
very different.
Way harder.
So so your customers are generating that way? I know a lot of, businesses is very referral based and people but was yours it was mostly the Google ads and all of that is just people online?
Yeah, my very first job, I had never ran one of them before. I just had my truck. I didn't even have a trailer picked out yet or planned to use my dad's or anything. And I just started running the ads. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I spend $100 and I don't get a call. So I think I got $40 in or something, and I got my first call. And it was only a $65 job picking up a mattress. Yeah. But I'm like, I can be out there in an hour.
But you remember it.
Yeah. And then I took a bunch of pictures at that job, and then I had my sister go with me. So I'm like, hey, I need someone to help. I don't have a single person to help me with this. Can you please help me with this? She's like, yeah, I'll go. So she went with me. We picked up, I think it was 1 chair and 1 mattress. And I asked the lady, I'm like, you gotta leave me a review. You are literally my first customer. I need you to leave me a review. And she did.
And so why was that important? Why did you know that was important?
Well, I had just known working with at the advertising thing, every business relies heavily on reviews, right? It's much easier to close jobs if you have a solid amount of reviews and a solid average. I had none. I might have had one from a friend or something that I don't even think I had done work for. But she was my first actual review that counts. And I just knew like, I got to start collecting that now, because I know even at the time I knew that I'm the one who's going to ask for this the most. Anyone else I have work for me is never going to ask.
Yeah. And so just on that topic, and we'll get into it as your business progresses, but how often do people tell you no when you ask for a review?
I mean, if you ask it right, never. Unless you did them real dirty. But I mean, you got to do such a bad job to get a true no if you're personable.
Yeah, I think the reason I asked the question, I think a lot of people are scared, like whether it's in sales or it's in business, it's okay just to say, hey, I did this service. Do you mind giving me a review? I don't think I've ever been told no.
Most of the time they don't even, people just, I think, don't ask. They just assume hope for the best.
Yeah. And not only that, it's like, I'm going to ask someone, now I have a policy now. We ask someone like, is there anything I could do that is not currently have this up to a 5-star standard? Like, what are we currently not doing to get to the 5-star standard? Because I'm going to fix it right now. And then I'm going to fix it now. And then I'm going to ask you for the 5-star review. Because I just made you basically verbally commit that if you do this, it's a 5-star outcome. Perfect. I did that. Could you leave me that review right now? I'm going to send you the link. Can you make sure it works? Sometimes it doesn't work. They click on the link. Would you mind just leaving it right now? How are you going to say no to that?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I love it.
Leaving my review right there.
Yeah, you can't. And no one's going to spend the time to go in and delete it. So they just be like, oh, okay. Yeah.
I love it. So go ahead.
At this point, so you're getting more and more customers, you're building your base, right? Getting the reviews. So you've been flipping everything and the cash part, but what are you learning about customers and, do you feel like there was something that really changed in like just your business knowledge? Like, what are you learning most at that time?
Yeah. You learn really fast in junk removal that the smallest problem can be blown really out of proportion. Junk removal customers are honestly very tough to work with. Their $200 pickup that you were an hour late on is like the end of the world to them, which is crazy. In roofing, they're less stressful over a ticket that's 100 times the size. And it's mind-boggling, to be honest. But I think some people, it's the only thing they can do that's like a white glove service. It's one of the only services they get like that. And maybe they're getting it because they can't afford a truck. So they're like expecting it to be just perfect. And it's a service. It's really hard to be perfect with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. So walk us through the progression of this business, because I want to transition into where you're at now.
Yeah. So I had that I bought that trailer with the insurance money, the extra insurance money I had. I did that for, I think, 6 months. And then I'm like, I could afford another truck right now. So I went and bought another truck and trailer. I think I bought another truck first as a backup because they break more than the trailers. So I had 2 trucks, 1 trailer. And then if a truck went down, I'm not going to fix it today. That's weekend me's problem, right? And I would just switch to the other truck, identical truck, both wrap. I actually learned to wrap them myself with branded wraps.
So 6 months in, how much, I can't believe you learned how to do that as well. But 6 months in, how much are you making when you buy this truck on ballparking it a month?
Like gross profit or actual net profit?
Gross profit.
I was probably doing like $20,000 a month of revenue.
Wow. And it's still just you, or have you hired people by now?
That was just me me and like 1 employee was probably doing like $20,000 a month of gross revenue.
Okay. Yeah. So how much are you spending to get to that 20 on your marketing?
Pretty low. I was probably spending like $1,800.
Okay. Wow. So incredible margin.
Yeah. And that was with 0 repeat customer base. And then 6 months after that, the repeat customers started coming around. And then the cost just, even as Google ads started to go up, my referrals were pushing it down. So I actually was still averaging a downward angle on cost per acquisition.
So are you just feeling like you've hit the jackpot, or you still have a different destination? Like this is a stepping stone. Yeah.
I was feeling pretty good. It's fun because I was also buying and selling, or like not buying and selling. I was getting paid to take stuff away, and then I would turn around and sell it a lot of the time. So it would be interesting. I'd go get they'd throw away like flat screen TVs that were perfect. And that was back when like flat screens were barely even popular. So I like multiple times I'd have stuff thrown away where it's like, this is like probably worth a couple grand. Like Bowflexes. People are real lazy. Yeah. They don't like working out. Bowflexes get thrown away like crazy. So I'm getting paid $150 to take this thing and I turn around and sell for $400. Wow. And I would do that constantly. So I just, in my garage, I would have like 2 or 3 Bowflexes at once. And then like other workout equipment. It's honestly the easiest thing to sell because people get rid of it. Not because it doesn't work. Because they don't work, right?
So did you ever sell Bowflex and then end up picking it up from the person you sold it to? Did it ever happen?
Oh gosh.
I think they ended up buying something else from me and just giving it back to me. Yeah, I don't think I picked it up from them like paid. I think they just brought it back, and I was like, yeah, whatever.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep us on track. So $20,000 a month, anybody would kill to go make $20,000 a month, especially after 6 months to a year. So how does this progress?
Yeah, I ended up getting that second truck. I had another guy that I basically brought on. I had a few guys that I had on that would work part-time. Most of them buddies that I knew from the limited sports I played or from the homeschool groups I was a part of. And I would have them run jobs for me here and there. And then it got to the point where I had 2 trucks and neither, I couldn't make it out that day no matter what. So I had both of them take both trucks out. So I was like, oh, wow, that business is running and I'm not actively doing anything except taking the calls. That's pretty fun, right? And then I'm paying people on payroll, but really messy payroll for like the first 2 months of having employees. And then I got it dialed in like, all right, now I got my pay stubs, everything perfect, right? Whereas actual professional looking business to the employees. Then I started bringing on more guys, got up to 3 trucks and stayed at that for quite a while. To be perfectly honest, 3 trucks is like more stress than 2 and more stress than 4 would be. It's a really weird spot where you can't be fully just a manager when you have that little of a fleet. So you have to be out in the field and doing the management level stuff. And you need to have more people in the field and exclusively do management. I would either, if I were doing it over again, I'd stay at 1 to 2 trucks, or I would go to 4. I would literally wait until I could afford 2 additional. I would never stop in between.
Interesting. Super interesting. So let's take through how you get out of this business and where you're at when you do. So when you decide to get out, how many trucks do you have? How many people you have working for you? What's your income coming in?
So at that point, I had gotten I switched over from truck and trailers to nice Isuzu dump trucks, nice custom built out, very nice, very efficient, a lot more government regulation on them trucks. So that's the downside. Got to scale, got to go through a lot of inspections. But this was in 2018, 2019. One of my competitors in junk removal had gone out of business. He had started within a month of when I started, and he had bought 3 brand new trucks out the gate with no idea how to market himself. So I went to him and I said, he had 1 truck left. I got a huge discount on it because it had 4,000 miles on it. Bought it from him, and I said, hey, as part of this deal, I want your phone number. I'm like, I just think that's a cool number. I knew it was more than a cool number. That was his entire existing customer base.
Yeah.
So I swiped that number for $0 extra. I ended up getting a bunch of not a bunch, but I got 3 or 4 big corporate accounts out of it.
They just called into the number?
Yeah, and they just were they said the other business name. I said, this is Joel with Junk Patrol. And I just kind of transitioned it. And if they questioned it, I'd be like, oh, I actually bought his assets. And I just rolled into it. And then another thing with another company, I was going to buy their trailer. They went out of business too. Also same age as me when they started it. And they folded. And I realized that I knew what phone software they were on, and they were no longer using the software. So I couldn't get a hold of them because their number was gone. So I ended up calling the phone software provider. It was called Ring Central. I called them. I said, do you guys still have access to that phone number? I know it's currently unclaimed. And they said, yes, it's unclaimed. And I said, perfect. Well, I'm going to sign up with an account with you guys. I'd like that phone number, please. I signed up. They gave me the account or the number. I ported it out into my other software, and I only paid a month of the subscription to that software. Took that number, got my biggest corporate client out of that number too.
Wow.
That client probably did $30,000 a year of revenue for 4 years, but did both of those in 2018, 2019, around there. And
fascinating.
Yes.
Can I ask you, and it's so your competitors in that space, which is very interesting. Everyone does, but to be in there. So you said they folded, why do you, and they started similar time as you, why do you think, what was the difference? Why did you make it and they didn't? Not that you know it, but what's your assumption?
It's stressful. It is a stressful thing. And you have to be really good with your cash flow, because there are times where you're making a ton. And then if I want to go buy myself something, and then I have a really slow month after that, it's terrible. It's totally terrible. So I think they fell victim to that. And this one guy, had dropped $200,000 to start a business that he knew nothing about. Meanwhile, I bootstrapped it with my own truck and borrowing a trailer, right? So he dropped $200,000, had all that overhead attached to it. It's dude, you can't do that. That's with no knowledge, no existing customer base.
You got to make up that $200,000.
Yeah. So I don't know why he did that. He was probably like 50 too, an older guy. And like, so he should have had the knowledge. I think he had owned other businesses before, but yeah, he made that mistake.
Just made that mistake. Wow. So how do you transition out? When does that decision happen and where are you at?
Yeah. So that was I had been talking to the guy who had helped me. His name is Matthew. Had helped me with the Google ads and stuff like that when I had worked at the other business or the other company, the marketing agency. I had been talking to him and he was telling me he had been doing home improvement sales for a little while. And he had basically been telling me like, dude, we could totally figure this out. I know your dad's in contracting. And I found out later he had actually gone to a bunch of his friends and none of them would be willing to do it. I jump into things without thinking it through a bunch. So I used to.
I think you think things through compared to most others.
I think it through, but I was like, that sounds like I can make it work, right? So we started that in May of 2019. We filed the paperwork on it. I went to my dad. I said, Dad, have I got a proposition for you? I said, I just need to borrow your license. I'll pay you this % of revenue in perpetuity for the license to use it. You'll be on it. You'll be able to assist us with everything, but like it's going to be mine and Matt's operation. And so we started, he hemmed and hawed on that for a little while. And I finally convinced them. I'm like, guys, you can make a few grand. That was my pitch to them. You can make a few grand a month doing nothing. Well, that few grand ended up being a way low ball. It was not that. But I was like, that was what I sold them on. It was like a few grand a month. And I did that. We started all that, got everything rolling, ran our first appointment in the middle of
Hold on. So let's back up. So how do you start it? What do you go do? Like, interest of time, we got about 20 minutes left. So how do you start it? Because you're jumping fast. Like,
for me, it's
because you've been through it, but that's a massive undertaking. And you still have your junk removal going.
Yeah, it's way less undertaking than you'd think. Like, way less. The fear of doing it was the biggest part. Once you start doing it, it goes so fast.
So I love it. So is it, I think you probably nailed it. The fear is bigger than the actual task itself.
Way bigger. That's every single thing that everyone asks me questions all day long with they're trying to get an answer. It's like, you just thinking you can't do it is the biggest hurdle. Every time.
And so this is roofing. Why not anything else? Like how did you,
Just pick.
So he had experience doing sales in that. He's like, dude, I can put together a sales pitch for this. He's like, and I know you've been working with employees, so I know you can manage people. Your dad's got a license. I'm like, I could do that side of it. And we both could figure out the marketing side. And both of us, he had a carpet cleaning business at the time. Both of us were really into the idea of a really strong brand right from the start, not just like trying to piece the brand together as you go. So we paid a company to build out a branding package. It was a couple grand. But it was like logo, vehicle wraps, pamphlets that are all like designed to match. So we came out the gate with everything looking like we were a really solid operation, not just like a Fiverr logo, right? Or someone goes and spends $20 on a logo. So that really helped. But I was simultaneously running Junk Patrol. So we didn't really put any cash into Spartan when starting it. It was like $5,000 each is all we put in. But I did load a bunch of the cost of tearing off roofs onto Junk Patrol. For the first like 6 months or 5 months, Junk Patrol tore off almost every roof and I didn't invoice any of it to Spartan. So I floated a big chunk of it on the back end there.
Got it.
Just to get it rolling. So, but it wouldn't be needed again. Now, knowing now that I could just subcontract the tear-offs out for a really competitive price, I would have done that.
So when you're going through this process, when you decided to get into Spartan in the roofing industry, are you doing the math on what you need to do? Or because I think that's important. Are you doing the math of like, okay, this could be profitable? So
we had guys come out from a couple of our now big competitors, salesmen come out, and I had them bid a roof on a structure my dad owned, a little rental property. And we kind of got their marketing materials, how he pitched it. Honestly, we used their contract as inspiration for why do they have these things in it? Because like, why reinvent the wheel? I could try and sit there and draft my own thing, or I could go get 4 contracts from different companies and see what they all share in common, and then just do the same thing that they share in common. So I did that. I was still running Junk Patrol. So we were kind of doing a hybrid of the two. My salesman at the time, my first salesman, had never sold home improvement. So he goes out to his first ever roof and he gets on it. He goes, how do I measure this? I say, uh-oh. That's a good point. Let me see if I can figure it out via satellite. And I'm sitting there on satellite. I have an app on my phone. I just look up roof measurement app. And I start measuring it out on my phone because I don't have my computer. And I figured it out. I send him a measurement. I'm like, that should be pretty close. And he pitched it. He didn't get that one. The guy's name was Dino, our first customer. I have that file saved. Didn't get that one. Didn't get the next one, but he did get the third one he went to in the first day. And we did get, his name's Bill. He was a lethal sales guy.
And so from Junk Patrol, is this how you start learning your marketing for Spartan, or is it different?
Well, so me and Matt was running his own marketing for the carpet cleaning and doing some marketing for other guys in home improvement at the time. So he was actually doing marketing for a guy who did some PPP fraud and is now in jail. But before that, Matt stopped working with them. The guy, they weren't answering the phone. So that's why Matt had called me to start it. He's like, dude, these guys are busy and making money and they're literally not answering the phone on these leads. They're acting like it's a chore to answer these customers' calls. He's like, that's a potential $30,000 sale. And they're just like, I don't have time to answer it. So we made it be our thing. Like, we always answer the phone. That was a really big thing. But we were simultaneously, I was doing Junk Patrol and that, and we were like ramping up Spartan. And then while that happened at Junk Patrol, I had, while we were doing all that, I had a group of guys that were my friends that also were my employees. Big mistake. Yeah. They were my employees that kind of turned into my friends too, which is a problem. A couple of them were stealing from me. And I found that out. And that, I'm 20 or 21 at the time. Does not feel good. Yeah. So I'm like, Spartan's already doing well. And I'm just like, I could totally be done with Junk Patrol. Like, they totally killed my motivation for it.
Oh, wow.
So I had a potential buyer already lined up for it. He ended up falling through. He actually works for me now at Spartan, but he ended up falling through. And I ended up selling to my cousin, who has taken it to 3 locations now, but kept ramping up Spartan.
So let's go back. So how long did you have Junk Patrol for total before you sold it?
4 years, I think.
4 years.
Oh, wow.
You started with nothing. Dad helps you out with truck. What did you sell it for?
410,000, I think. Something like that.
Okay. And so then you're going right into Spartan, and it's you and a partner. And how fast does it scale? Take us through year 1 to year 2.
Yeah. So month 1, we ended up doing, I think, like 80 grand in sales. Month 2, we did like 130, I think. And then month 3, we did like 300 grand.
Oh my gosh. And you've never done, this is like, you've never done this.
No
before.
idea. We were still figuring out how we were going to get them installed, to be honest. We're like, we got to figure this out. So we were doing it, like, we were going out and being at every job site. We had a subcontractor we were using for everything.
Oh, I gotta stop you here because I'm in sales. We're in sales. I think it's so important. People get so caught up in sales, like, you have to have everything right. You have to know everything. You guys are selling, and you don't even know how to finish the project.
To me, this is us at work. Yeah, so he's just like, we'll figure it out. Like, let's just get the yes, and then I'm like, and like, no, it's fine.
I mean, so you seem to figure stuff out a lot faster when you have to.
Yes.
So we ended up, we were just like, we'll figure this out, and we just. To this day, I could tell you I know a lot more. I would not say that I know everything about it. I've seen most scenarios you can see on a roof, but there's no way I'll ever see them all. So yeah, there's plenty to learn still.
So I have a lot that I want to get into, and this is going to end up going over. But so how long have you had Spartan now?
Oh, almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. So how many employees do you have now?
We have some crews that are like exclusively ours, but operate under their own license it's easier for invoicing. If we count them, which they're basically our employees, we treat them like that. It's right around 50.
Right around 50. Wow. So go from 2 of you to 50. And if you don't mind me asking, what are you making in a year? What's the business bringing in? And if you don't want to share, you don't have to.
Revenue wise?
Yeah.
Last year we did over 10 million.
Over 10 million.
Well over 10 million. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And of those 50 employees, how many are family?
Well, it's actually going up because I didn't really employ any family to start. My dad ended up buying out my business partner Matthew's shares, a chunk of them. We're actually still finalizing some stuff on that, but he ended up that's where he wanted to go. He had another thing he wanted to do, and right now I've got my sister. I actually still have Matt's mom. She's awesome. She's great. She works for us. I think that's it right now. I had a couple other family members that worked for me, but not anymore.
When you think about going from flipping, motorcycles and buggies and things like that to making $10 million a year and taking care of your family, is it a blur? Do you realize what you have accomplished? I mean, you're 26. Do you realize what you've done? Like, I've talked to you about this before. Do you know? Are you aware of it?
I'm aware there are unknowns that a lot of people don't see. And it's a thing I've only recently become aware of. Personal connections are way harder to make when you're good at business at a young age because you spend your entire developmental years learning the business side of it. So the actual personal bonding aspect with any person is like incredibly hard because I didn't do any of that, right? Because it's all a transactional thing with me right now. My employees, I try not to make it transactional, but when you're a business owner, a lot of stuff, you basically have to think about most things transactionally, which it starts to take a toll. And I've recently realized that like almost everything in my brain has become transactional, and it's not a great thing.
Even in personal life, I'm assuming you're saying business and...
It spills over, and you try and silo it, but it's very difficult because of I've got 50 people that I got to make sure that I don't let the business, anything go wrong with the business, right? So I'll work sometimes until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. I will literally fall asleep and dream about work. I'll dream about the stuff I was working on, and I will wake up and my instinct is to immediately go get my computer. And it's like, there's a side of it that people don't see. Like you gotta balance it.
You're obsessed.
Yeah. And there's a point where like, you got to balance it more than I have. I haven't balanced it enough.
And so how much of that obsession is with the responsibility of 50 people? Is that like a big weight?
That's a good chunk of it, but I'll be perfectly honest, more of it, like when I saw my mom, like kind of tearing up to one of her friends that she's going to be able to retire soon, like that's more of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I care about my employees and whatnot, but I'm a little bit of a mama's boy. I really care about my mom, and that's an unbeatable motivation. Like I'm sorry, but you'll never be able to demotivate me after that.
Plus, you owe it to your 14-year-old self that you recorded.
Yes.
That recorded the message.
Yeah. So my goal. She wants me to buy her a car soon, and I think I'll get her something fun soon.
Very cool. So we talked about this a little bit before, and I know Natasha's going to geek out on this. You have 50 employees. You're 26. Leadership is something that is developed over time. So how do you hone in on your leadership of your teams, your people, your business? What is your process? How do you educate yourself?
Yeah, so I'm still learning a lot on that every day. I'd like to think I'm a lot better at it now than I was a year and a half ago, but I'm nowhere near where I'd like to be on it. But right now, I do a lot of audiobooks. John C. Maxwell, I think it is. Yeah. The 21 Laws of Leadership was like a really game-changing book for me. And then scaling up The Rockefeller Habits 2 by, I don't remember who it's by, but that's a phenomenal book too.
So I mean, this is genuinely as possible. I don't know that you do know where you're at as far as leadership. So I've been in the corporate world for, 30, 40 years. I've met people that have never read a single book. You're making $10 million a year and you're investing your time in book. That's unusual. So what is why did you decide that you needed to be a better leader when you have this level of success? It's uncommon. Is what I'm saying. I mean,
I'm probably what you would call right now. Sure, for most business owners, it might be a little above average, but I'm what I'd consider fine right now as a leader. Right? I want to be a great leader.
Why? That's my question. Where did that come from?
A lot of it came from that book, but most of it came from the wish to be able to leave something behind. Like if I ever were to leave Spartan or anything like that, if you just build it where it relies on you, you were a good leader, but not a great leader. Because you can't back out. He talks about that in that book a lot. If your business, I think it's that book. If a business relies on you and you back out and it totally collapses, you did a terrible job setting everyone else up in that. You didn't lead them correctly. You bossed them. I try to do a lot of empowering them to like make their own decisions. And nowadays, critical thinking is a huge thing that a lot of people lack. So I really try. If someone asks me a question, I make them give me their suggested solution first. Because then they probably didn't even rationalize it at first. And then I make them rationalize through it. And they're usually right. And then I can either reinforce them, like, yes, you made the correct choice, or, hey, you didn't, and here's why. And I'll give them the information they were missing. And slowly, hopefully, they'll be able to trust their own opinion, their own decisions on everything.
Yeah, it's so unique. And
I'm just like... To be honest with you, I'm normally, or just a lot in my career, I've been the youngest person in the room and sometimes with, different success levels. And so I'm like fascinated right now because I don't generally talk to younger people that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, so I guess on that point, why do you think other people don't do this? Why do you think other people are not as successful as you or able? Because not everybody can. Not everybody can go start a business, or I mean, they could, but they don't. So
yeah,
if it's you can make $300,000 and you're month 3, you know, why doesn't everybody do it?
You know, the fear aspect's a big one. A lot of people end up they're too slow moving on doing something until they have too much life responsibility behind them, right? If I had gone and had a kid, then I'm going to sit there and now I'm going to have to. You can still do it, and you should still do it if you're in that in that position. But yeah, you made it harder by having a kid before you did that. If you waited that long, and there's nothing wrong with having a kid, but if you waited that long to do something, and then now you're like, man, now I have to take care of a kid and do that. You totally can. It's going to be a slower build for you, though.
What advice would you give people your age? It's hard to say younger, but what would you give advice to people your age that want to start a business?
Well, I didn't party at all until I turned like 24. Like I literally partied none. So if you can manage not doing that, you will have a lot more energy for figuring stuff out. And that's why I do go out and have a good time now, but I have responsibilities in place that now I won't go out on a bender, right? And go on multi-day binge drinking and then be all messed up and not be able to work. Because if you get all messed up over the weekend, it's not just taking you Sunday to recover. It's taking you Sunday to feel okay. It's taking you until like Tuesday for your brain to come back fully.
Yeah, wait till you hit 30 or 40.
Yeah, easy. Go 40.
So yeah, I would just say try and actually like believe that you can do something and just don't give up. Because most people, the 80% is easy to learn on any topic. And then you run into that wall of like, I'm not fully grasping this. And you spend all the time learning it. And then you're just not doing that remaining 20%. Yeah, it's the harder part. But if you figure it out, once you learn it, right?
So if I'm just going to ask you questions as I'm coming to you for business advice, what's a good time frame to invest before I say, okay, maybe this just was not the right path? Is it 6 months? I learned that 80%. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Or is there not a number? Is it like, how would you think about that?
I refuse to give up personally, because unless you're willing to sit there and admit that everyone else is way smarter than you, which most people are generally around the same IQ, right? Like it's not a huge range, it's a decent range, but unless you're willing to say I'm well below average, right? I'm dumb, then you can figure it out. Like you'll get smarter the more you try. So I don't really think there's a point in giving up on anything.
So are you it sounds like you are you a burn the boats guy? Like I'm all in, and if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to the end once I start, and everything else literally burn the boats. I'm just moving forward.
I don't put myself in a position where things could collapse out from under me. I financially secure myself, but I do things. I will jump into things if I can see, like if I look at something and say, all right, here's what I expect. Let's say a marketing thing, right? I say, all right, this marketing tactic is going to cost me $20,000 to do, right? To try this thing. And I know that the gross profit on 3 jobs will cover that $20,000, right? Not the net, obviously, but the gross will mostly cover that on 3 jobs. And my target is to get to 30 jobs. And that's what I want the piece to perform at. That's what I think. I look at it and say, all right, if this will perform at even 1/10 what my calculation is, will I at least make that cost back? And it's like, okay, I will. I'm going to do it. Because the chance of me losing money is low. The chance of me gaining money is high if it works. But there's like almost no way to lose out on it.
And so people that want to get into a business, what is the best? I think service is a big one. So what's the type of industry, or what would you say to go after?
Yeah, service for sure. I would agree. It's very easy to do with very little cost. I have a buddy who started a gutter cleaning business out of his Mitsubishi Eclipse. And he had no idea what he was doing. He knocked the neighboring doors and said, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood tomorrow cleaning gutters. Would you like us to do yours? And he signed a few of them up to do it. He comes back the next day in his Eclipse with a little telescopic ladder, gets up on the roof, and they're like, where's your truck? He's like, I don't have a truck. He gets up, cleans the gutters out. He made I think $800 the first day.
He just go for it.
Yeah.
It's like I can't remember who said it, but take the step and the path will appear. It sounds like that's you.
Yes.
Which I absolutely love.
Would you consider yourself a confident person?
little too confident. Yeah.
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 Would you consider yourself arrogant?
Probably to some people. Yeah. I try not to be, but probably.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't come off arrogant. Like the times I've met you, don't come off arrogant. You are confident, not arrogant. Just to give you my 2 cents.
I try not to be. If you think you're the smartest one in the room, you won't really learn anything. So I try never to think that.
What advice would you give people just in general? And specifically to your age group, the 20s?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the service business thing. Like, if you want to learn something, start out, go into a service or sales position. If you want to go do home improvement sales or door knocking, as much as people hate having their doors knocked on, you will learn how to handle rejection, and you'll learn how to talk to people, and you'll learn how to sell. So that's a great way to start. And then you could do that for a company where you'll have a base pay of some kind, then some commission incentives to make more, learn how to do really good, and then go do your own thing in maybe a service or construction, or just continue in a sales position. I really think the service is a great way to go, though.
Yeah, I've told all of my kids and anyone that will listen to me, your first job, first 2 years, go be a salesperson. You will learn more about yourself, number one, but you'll learn so much about other people and how to interact with them. From that point on, you're good. Where are you at in...
That's going to be my question.
This is tough. Where are you at 30, 4 years from now?
Yeah, the big 3-0. Like me personally or business-wise?
Professionally.
We're at 2 locations now. The second one is ramping up still, but it's ramping up pretty quick now. I'd like to, by the end of this year, have a third one. And I'd like to, by the end of next year, have maybe 2 more running. I'd like to have like 5 really solid locations doing a lot of revenue. Because that kind of network, I mean, boy, you can do conferences with just like your salesmen where you have like 40 guys show up, 50 guys show up. Like, that's awesome. I can be really focused on one thing at a time. I have a little bit of ADHD, which means like when I focus on one thing, like I really laser focus in on it.
Yeah.
But it takes me a long time to get onto that topic.
And do you think this, the roofing, like this business, you think that's the forever business? Or you have big dreams of other things you'd like to do as well?
I have other things I'd like to do. Just because you do eventually not cap out on your knowledge, but you start learning at a much slower rate. So maybe someday, but the market is weak, and there's not really anyone dominating the residential space. I have no doubt that I could dominate the residential space and be like the largest operation in the U.S. It's a really weak market. Peterson Dean was the top dog, and they folded, paving the way for someone new to come in.
I love it. Personally, girlfriend, married, girlfriends. What's the situation?
It's complicated.
That's the best answer for 20 and 30-year-olds.
It's complicated. Yeah.
We'll leave it at complicated. I take it life is good. Business is good. Life is good.
Business is better right now. Let's just say that. Business is better than the rest, but life, it's complicated.
I hear you.
That's a really good answer. For the listeners, so I have a staple question, and I ask people what they'd tell their 30-year-old self, but normally they're looking back, so I won't ask you that question. But I guess for those that are listening to the podcast, just any kind of last things that you would hope that they would get out of it, or anything else that you'd share.
If you're doing any of this that's stressful, go to the gym and start working out regularly, because boy, did that clear my mind when I started doing that. You're physically tired, but mentally you're just so sharp. I would say, yeah, if you're not getting exercise consistently, like that was a big part of it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to jump on that. If you can do it first thing in the morning, it changes your entire life.
Yeah. The workout's not as fun in the morning, but the rest of your day is way better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Of course.
Delivered on just being incredibly interesting and fascinating, and appreciate you sharing the story. I think I know everybody's going to get so much out of this, and we're going to go start a business tomorrow.
I was just going to say, yeah. Thank you so much for walking us through all of it. We always say we want to get things out of it for the listeners, but I get something out of every single episode. So I don't play favorites, but you're one of my favorite conversations. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. You're my favorite podcast.
Perfect. If you want to leave us a review, we'd love it. And if it's not 5-star, we will.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that later.